Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Caleb, and today we are happy to be showing you guys our event, The Future of Artificial Intelligence for the Community. This event is presented as a part of our Coast Capital Speaker Series, which is presented by the Association for Critical and Interdisciplinary Thinking. Before we start, I'd like to make a land acknowledgement saying that SFU is located on the unceded territory of the Tsleil-Waututh, Coquitlam, Squamish, and Musqueam nations. And I'll hand it off to Patrick to introduce ACIT.
Howdy, y'all. My name is Patrick. I'm the president of ACIT SFU, the first Canadian branch of the Association for Critical and Interdisciplinary Thinking. And I'm super excited to be hosting this event today together with Caleb. And for a quick little overview of what exactly ACIT is, we are a global nonprofit think tank focusing on artificial intelligence, cognitive neuroscience, and social change, which is why we're having an event on artificial intelligence today. Now, as for the stuff we do, we host cool events like these, mainly with the goal of helping spread free education. We also do stuff like conferences, articles, and podcasts, such as our little podcast series where we interview scientists to learn all about their research and their thesis statements and stuff like that. In addition to that, we also host opportunities for people to gain new leadership skills and hands-on opportunities to work together with a global international team. So through our Career Starter program. So feel free to check us out through our website after this event is done. But that wraps up my little explanation of ACIT. So I'll pass it back to Caleb.
All right, thank you so much, Patrick. Okay, so now that we've gone through that, let's get right into it. So we're just gonna start by introducing our panelists and just having them all let us know about their careers in AI and what they do with it. So let's start with Nipun. He's gonna tell us about what he does with artificial intelligence.
So basically, we work with high-level AI, that is, or low-level AI actually, that is building architectures from the ground up for major breakthroughs that most other companies might not focus on, and making specialized items where they might be unheard of by current architectures or not able to do those. So that's what we work on. And then we work with specialized equipment such as infrared cameras and those kind of things to integrate them into a bigger automation for companies that might not be able to do things with regular or conventional software itself. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that introduction. Okay, so next I'll pass it on to Hassan, who's gonna tell us about Intuitive.
Yeah, for sure. So thanks guys for having me. And so Hassan, co-founder and CEO of Intuitive AI. And we started the company because of one main reason, which is really that majority of what you and I and everybody generates eventually ends up in landfills, or we burn it, or we ship it off to third world countries. So this is why me and my co-founder, we come from India and Pakistan. We grew up in Dubai, where landfills are very popular, even though it's very advanced in terms of other things, and then immigrated to Canada to study robotics, and so and worked down in California. But the thing, the through line in all of this was, no matter where we went, people were terrible at recycling, and there was a shit ton of waste being generated in every one of the countries. And so we realized that, okay, there's a massive problem of waste, and as population increases, it's just going to increase over time. And we only recycle about 1%, and we only compost about 1%. So this like might have changed 5 or 10 or 20% from back when we started to now, but it's terribly low in terms of what we're doing with resources that we actually dig out of our planet. And so what we do at Intuitive is we help some of the biggest, baddest producers of this waste, so global brands. We help them meter understand, and then begin eliminating that waste. So really, knocking some sense into them, and showing value in waste. So that's a little bit about Intuitive. Happy to talk about the AI component as we get started. Thanks.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, so next I'll hand it off to Jenny.
Hi everyone, my name is Jenny. I am the co-founder of Haven, and I have with me Kristen as well. I'll let her do her own introduction afterwards. But essentially, we are a nonprofit organization that aims to use technology and AI for social good. And right now, our primary focus is to help victims of intimate partner violence. We do this through our two pillars, one being technology and the other being education. Essentially, what we're doing is we're building a suite of mobile and desktop applications with the hope that we can help victims improve their safety and also their well-being through more accessible solutions. We also hope to be able to provide the necessary education and tools to ensure that they have the support necessary to maintain themselves and also to stay out of an abusive relationship. We work primarily with NLP right now, voice processing, and effective computing methods. And currently we're developing our first mobile application where we're working very closely with other nonprofit organizations within our sector.
Great, awesome, thank you so much. Okay, so now that we've got our introductions, just to let the audience know, if you ever have any questions throughout this event, feel free to direct message them to me or put them out in the chat. And if I have the chance, I'll be able to get to them. All right, so just some more introductory questions. So let's start off by talking about how you first got interested in AI. So we'll hand it off to Kristen.
Hi, yeah, so I'm Kristen. I am a board member at Haven. In my full-time day job, I work at Yelp as a data scientist. And I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, I think like my first interaction with AI was probably as a consumer, like when you start noticing things like facial recognition and cell phones and stuff, and you're like, how does this work? And I always loved math, and I did my undergrad in statistics. So the field just seemed to move more and more towards really like concrete applications where AI can make a huge difference to society, both for good and for profit. And I think, yeah, that's sort of how I got into this space.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you. Nipun, why don't you tell us about how you first got into AI? Oh, you're still muted there.
My bad. So yeah, my journey starts way back in 2012 when like the AI boom was not even heard of. When the first AI was starting, I actually started off with drones, or UAVs as we know it. So we started with drone delivery, and one of the biggest problems is birds and buildings and everything. So doing object detection, and at that time YOLO was the latest model, or the SSDs were just coming up and like very basic. And that's when I first got to know about AI. Then recently we did a couple of projects where we had to implement AI from the very scratch of like taking different types of models and putting them into one. So for different social and non-social causes. So yeah, like my journey dates back to 2012 with object recognition or object classification. And that has been continuing ever since. And then after that, you know, as Kristen said, that you start to recognize, oh, you have AI. Will you have AI in your phones, and every single part of your life is controlled by AI. So yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool to see how integrated it's become in life and the improvements that it's led to that I hope we can touch on later. All right, Hassan, could you tell us about how you first got into AI?
Yeah, for sure. So, it's interesting. Nipun mentioned UAV drones. While I was going through university, we worked on drones. I think it was around 2013. During that time, we didn't apply any AI. It was just dumb computer vision that we were just doing, traditional stuff to teach a computer what it's seeing, but it was just basic patterns. And then, worked on autonomous submarines, same thing. So it was pretty dumb. But as we went, so I think it was 2015 when I worked at Tesla in the autopilot team. And so this was like right before autopilot was about to launch. And so I was part of the AEB team, which is automatic emergency braking team, which is one part of autopilot. And so I think I was just thrown into it. I had no experience with AI, and our team's manager was, like you keep hearing Mr. Elon Musk is cracking down on this guy, shouting at this guy, and he's everywhere, and you sense him, and everybody's running around. So that was an accelerated sort of crash course into AI, but actually experiencing it as well. But yeah, so that it was early stages. We launched the autopilot during my time over there to sort of beta testers of Tesla. And then once I came back, it was like very obvious when we saw the problem of waste and realized that, there is actually no sensor to even measure waste, right? Like where everybody's talking about how do we get to zero waste and all of that. Like we can measure electricity, we can measure water, like those are things that we can actually measure and try to mitigate. But with waste, there was nothing. And like literally the best way to measure waste for a building or a corporation is to hire people and dig through trash. So that's like the best method. And all they're doing is they're recognizing objects, brands and items, and they're writing down what it is, how much it weighs and things like that. And we said we could do this in an automated way, and we just need to create an AI. So hence we started with a very basic concept. Let's create a sensor for waste. And we call it AI, but it's really machine learning applied to computer vision or trying to improve that. So really teaching a computer how and what it's seeing within a field of view. So it's like we call it, it's not a self-driving car exactly, but it's the same self-driving car technology, but on top of a garbage bin or a dumpster or a container. So yeah, that's a little bit about how we dove into or got interested in AI.
Yeah, that's a very cool introduction into the world. So that's really great. Okay, so just moving on to the next question. What's the biggest hurdle you had when you were first learning about AI? So yeah, maybe we'll come back to Kristen for this one.
Sure. So this is interesting. I think when we were getting into AI, and especially like Haven as an organization, a lot of us who are like the founders and the board members all met in a university setting. And so we don't have a lot of resources. And I think one of the biggest things is how do you get the compute power that you need? How do you pay for the compute power you need? You get excited about using all these, new techniques, and then you're like, I can't wait this long for it to run. So that's definitely one of the big hurdles for when you're starting a business that is built off of AI. And I think one of the other things as a company is just how to keep up. There's so many emerging technologies in the AI field all the time. And so when you're trying to build a product out of AI and you're trying to create some value to consumers, there's constantly different sort of products emerging, and you want to make sure that you have the latest technology. And if there's some, other companies that pop up in the same space as you, how do you form strategic partnerships, learn from each other? We're in the nonprofit sector, so people tend to play nice, which is good. But yeah, I think those are some of the biggest hurdles for us.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Okay, so Hassan, why don't you tell us the biggest hurdle you had when you were first learning about AI?
Yeah, I mean, we both were robotics engineers, and so we didn't really. I don't think anybody's taught AI, but we didn't have a very strong background in terms of computing science per se. So we just had the passion and I think the right, or the luck for sure, that we a couple things were happening. So it was post 2015 where computer vision was really taking off, or CV and ML was taking off, and so object detection really was improving at that point. And so there were problems that there was like only one article out there. I remember it was called TensorFlow for Poets, and that was like an article, and before that there was like IBM Watson that was like providing a classifier service or something like that. There was just these two that we remember. There were no boards, and I think what Kristen is mentioning about compute power, it's like if you're creating and deploying these devices on a remote environment, like there was no embedded system that would allow you to run AI models on it. You had to do it on a computer that had a massive GPU. And even GPUs didn't take off, right? Like GPUs were terrible at that time. There were no embedded systems that had the concept of running models on it. So there was no like TensorFlow wasn't fleshed out at all. So I mean, everything that you can imagine, even AWS at that point, like when we were starting off, it wasn't as accessible to us. But what really changed things was us participating in Next AI in Creative Destruction Lab at University of Toronto, that like gave us access to AWS, gave us access to some of the best folks in AI that really kicked it off for us, or else we would have been lost in our own space.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that. And then Nipun, what was the biggest hurdle you faced when you were first learning about AI?
I think I can again what Kristen said and Hassan said, like again 2015 I remember there were no GPUs. 2012 there were literally nothing on AI. TensorFlow just came out. It was still in its early beta phase, and because TensorFlow came out back in 2009 when it actually came out a full version, and 2012 was not a good year again for TensorFlow. So again, I remember so many problems, and then you did not have SSD, or you had slow RCN, and you get like 9 frames and your drone is moving at 80 kilometers per hour. You literally can't afford that. So, and embedded boards were not there, so you can't put like a full fat system on your drone. So I remember all those problems and everything that came up during that time. But there were developments, I think those got fixed, and it has improved a lot. It has considerably grown and improved a lot. I think the next problem that we face a lot is clean data set. Like, where do you get the data, and where do you get that clean data, so that or how do you clean the data itself? Like, I understand with Hassan, because I am in a similar field for one other company that we are working with. Where do you get that data? How do you actually pronounce that data or clean that data, and then label all those images? Because like, even for a computer vision model to be accurate enough for deployment, you need 100,000 images. And how do you do that in an efficient way? So having all those things, like, I think data set and having a clean data set is the major hurdle for starting to learn. That you have to understand that, you need a clean data set first to actually start learning. And then I think now Collab Kaggle offers free GPUs, so that has literally brought down the hurdle of not having a GPU to learn. Like, you have a GPU, you have everything for free, so there's really not a hurdle anymore in that end. But yeah, back then it was. But now it's more about, I think the next hurdle I've also faced a lot is that, as Kristen said, there's so many models, and there's continuously, having like every day, I think every month there's a new model. Facebook launches Detectron 2, there's another update to it, and then there's SSD and there's new SSD. So testing all of them to see, this works better for me, or this does not work better for me. So us doing all the testing for our clients takes up a lot of time, and the client does not understand it in the first place. It does take time. but telling them that, oh, we are bringing you the best area and having testing all those things. Because right now I run 2A6000s, and the data set that we do for our clients takes up to 3 days. So that's 96 gigabytes of data, and we are just running images, and that still takes 2 days. So it's that getting complex, but then running all those things, it's again a lot complex task, which is a hurdle, but it will improve, I think, as the AI grows.
Yeah, and just to add to Dipun's point, you were getting into the domain of the data set piece, and like for us, for like these fintech startups and startups that are doing NLP, you could extract and get text data, relatively easier than what I'm about to describe. Is our data set is literally garbage, and like the joke doesn't work, garbage in, garbage out for us. It's like no, we need garbage, and literally we need to have a lot of garbage products or items. And you're like, oh yeah, just go to a shopping store and just buy every single item. Yeah, go ahead, buy that. It's going to cost you $50,000 just to go and buy every single product on the shelf, and then storing it, and then recording photos of it. And then guess what? Like, those are perfectly packaged products. You need things that are, in people's hands. People's hands look different, and environments at the back look different. And, and then with garbage, you can have like 6 different items in your hand or tray, and they're compressed, they're stuck with something else, and you've mashed everything, and it's like, it seems easier, and then you go like, oh, I can just use this data set, and I can take a little bit of that and a little bit of this and train a network. That was probably one of the biggest hurdles or mistakes that we did initially. It's like, yeah, it's just training like objects, and you could just like rotate the image a million times, and voila, you have your data set. That's going to create a pretty trashy system. And then you quickly realize that, okay, you need clean data. You need to focus, like, this is your main thing. So yeah, that takes quite a bit of time to develop. We're still developing it. It's always a work in progress.
Yeah, that's a great point, Hassan. I just want to add to that a little bit, because we've experienced that as well. Like, for us, there are like quite a few, proprietary like data sets that are licensed out for commercial or academic use now for like voice recordings, which is what most of our models are trained on. But we've run into the situation where we got to the point where our specific use case is just not handled by existing data sets, and we need things that are real. And I think that's what you mentioned, like, you need the hand in the picture. You can't, you want to simulate how it'll actually behave. And so for us, we have been working on like an actual data collection initiative to build our own like proprietary data set from volunteers who are donating their time to yell at each other. And, we have them do it where they put their phone in their pocket, their phone in a bag, their phone across the room, to create these like imperfect situations that more closely mirror life, so that when people are relying on us in a very vulnerable situation, that we can still maintain accuracy of our tools. And a quick plug, if you are interested in being a volunteer for 30 minutes to an hour, you yourself can be part of our data set by emailing us at hello.haven@gmail.com, and I'll put the email address in the Zoom chat.
Yeah, that's a great opportunity to get on to help out with that, because I think Haven is doing some really important work, so definitely good to do. I found it very interesting that a lot of the like same struggles you all faced early in the career, like there tended to be a lot of common threads and common struggles along the way. So yeah, that's great. Okay, onto another question here. So that you would know of, what are some misconceptions of AI that you may know of? So maybe I'll hand it off to Nipan.
Misconceptions. I think the one misconception is that AI is not advanced enough to take over the world. I think that is a misconception. It is right now very advanced to take over, and it has started to take over in terms of we have built algorithms that that took humans like so much time. Now we have literally reduced it by like 90% of the time. Companies are building such advanced algorithms that you really don't need pipelines. Like they're building pipelines that you have an starting and an ending point, and it will do everything on its own. AWS is a great example, and many other AI companies are a great example that you really don't have, need the human. It's basically gonna be like, oh, AI is gonna build that pipeline, or AI is gonna do that, or AI is gonna build a code as well. So I'm not sure if many of you might have heard in AI field that so Google has this company, DeepMind, I believe, or Deep Labs or something. They built an auto code, and which performed or equal to most of the average competitive coders. So now the AI is coding as well. So that is a misconception that AI is not going to take over. And as Hassan is saying, now we are taking on garbage using robotics. So both the things are gonna be, Terminator is gonna come soon. Terminator is not far away. But having said that, I think the biggest misconception is that AI is easy, or AI is AI is human. It's not. It is still a long way to go towards that consciousness and that ability to think like humans, where humans have that ability to process multiple things, even though we say deep learning and have neural networks and everything, but it is not at the end. It's just simple programming at the back end. So I think there's still a long way to go over there, and it's not anytime soon that's going to happen.
Yeah, I'm feeling like we're probably not at that point yet. I'm not the expert, but yeah, that sounds about right. Kristen or Hassan, did you have any other input on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe to counter that a little bit, one misconception that we see is that people think AI is good at some things that it's not. And specifically in like voice recording, which we deal with a lot, AI is not good at listening to older people, children, people with accents, and these are huge limitations for the research and technology we have so far to actually become systems that we rely on. And part of this is because a lot of research that's been done previously, the people who are collecting data sets aren't giving proper attention to the diversity that's needed to be able to properly predict for like small minority groups. They go, oh, I have 1 million sample size, so therefore I can make high accuracy. And then they're using their data set or like a portion of it to test that accuracy. And that data set is not telling you the accuracy for these like small minority groups unless you're taking the time to like look at it. And so I think we have huge room to improve in terms of designing products that work for everyone. And sometimes people think AI can solve our bias because it's objective, it doesn't have emotion, but we're training it on things that have been done in the past. We're training it on decisions that humans make. And so it's learning a lot of those bias, even if we aren't intentionally inputting features, like we're not putting in gender or race or political affiliation as a feature. Those things will get picked up through other sources. Like we've seen that before with some of the recruiting AI that has been used, where they say, we're not going to look at gender, we'll eliminate names. And then the AI figures out that you can figure out if someone is female if they went to an all women's college. And so I think there's a lot of work that still needs to be done for us to get to the point where AI can actually live up to what people think it can do.
Just to quickly add, I completely agree what Kristen is kind of talking about, that you kind of think that this AI system is going to be the fairest thing in the world, and it kind of because it's getting trained on such big data and things like that, it's going to really learn from everybody and be fair. And I think it's already coming out that it's not, and there are amazing examples of that where it doesn't and it goes haywire. And that, like, you have to really focus on the bias that your data set is creating, and focus on the diversity of it. I'm not, we're not focused on people, but just with trash items as well, and this kind of pairs to the hurdle point as well, that if you don't focus on the diversity of your data set, you're gonna you're gonna start biasing your data set, your models and networks so quickly. And people think that they can counter that with synthetic data, or like generating and simulating certain things. Yes, there are certain things you can complement and sprinkle on, but at the end of the day, nothing beats, at least from what we're seeing. And there's a lot of amazing innovations on synthetic data, but real data at the end of the day is what wins. So the way that you get more real data, if you're a business, is by having a bigger network outside, right? And not a network that is a niche that is just covering one area or one city, but it is truly global. And so the problem is, you're like, oh my God. So that means, like, if I want the best product, I've got to have, like, for us, it's like, if somebody says, hey, I just hacked up a couple of data sets and I showed a customer, something similar to Oscar, our product, it's like, great, good job, deploy it, because it will definitely fail in 99% of the real case scenarios. They will be happy with it for 2 days, but when sort of shit hits the fan, it is never going to compete against something that is trained on a very global, diverse data set that has learned from sensors that are actually out in the field. And even going back to things that Tesla and other companies, when they were building their data sets, you can see how the real life data set that simulations and things like that obviously exist, but real life data sets, like nothing can compare. Like, we were looking at data sets in China that you cannot mimic the behavior of driving and like things that are appearing out of the blue with a random simulation and things like that. You need a real data set, and you need to test your systems through that. It is and the only way you do that, it is a chicken and egg problem, but the winning point is, how do you make your product scalable so that you actually do get a really wide variety of data set very quickly. So it's been a problem that we've been facing, and any company in this space will face as well. But it's also at the same time a moat if you are the first one.
Yeah. That reminded me of a talk I went to where they were talking about self-driving cars, and specifically how so much of the training data originally was in India. And then they started to test it out in the US, and they were like, oh, snow. Important of globalization definitely rang true in that situation.
Yeah, I think one more thing I see is that one thing that you touched on, Kristen, is that like the niche data set that we need together. One thing that I've noticed is that you might think that, oh, I'll train my models on bigger data set and I'll not focus on the niche market, or like I won't focus a lot of attention on the niche market. But what I have seen is that you have to focus equally. Like, this is called a balanced data problem. balanced data problem, and this is something we face a lot, that we'll train something on a one thing more because we see, oh, this is more happening, or this is the more thing, and all our other data will get through that, oh, this is not working on the other ones, or it's just giving errors out of the other one. So I think that balanced data thing is also very important to look at. It's not just, oh, we have a lot of data or we have a very diverse data. It's just do we have a balanced data? I think that is another thing that we do face a lot of problem with as well.
All right, yeah, thank you for that discussion so much. That was great. I just wanted to quickly get to one of the audience questions. Let me just quickly find that again. So what deeper models are you using for deep learning? And if you guys need more elaboration on that, if the person who asked the question wanted to elaborate, that would help you guys. If not, yeah, I'll open up the floor to any panelists who want to take that.
I think I can go with. So we use this. So if it is image processing, we usually go with so we start with the YOLO model, which is a very basic YOLO v5 or YOLO v4 to see, okay, what kind of thing are we looking at, or what data kind of we need. Then we move towards SSTs and transfer learnings, and then try to do with okay, what now do we need? Like, I think main thing is that we see what's the difference between YOLO ACT, fast RCNN, and then or SSD, and then customize the solution towards that customer and that product need. But it's usually that starting off with the YOLO model and then seeing, okay, what is the next thing that we need to actually combat, or what is the thing that it's happening. Then usually with synthetic data that Hassan was talking about, we usually go with OpenAI. So they have like a GPT model, which is amazing. It's open. So if you guys are trying to get into that, it is an amazing open source database. Feel free to use it. OpenAI. So we use a lot of OpenAI's GPT models. BERT has, for NLP, BERT has taken a step back for us, that we use BERT a lot, but it has been, GPT has been catching up quickly and growing fast. And we use Deep Labs models that they publish online. They are usually test models. They're not the best ones, but they are good enough. And for machine learning, it really depends on what kind of problem is it. Is it like a Facebook linear regression? What kind of deep learning models do we use? That again depends upon the problem and the situation.
Sorry, Tom, are you talking? I think you went on.
Yes, thanks for the update. I work for a large, in the Silicon Valley, I work for the largest social media company. We just renamed ourselves, but yeah, we're doing a lot of, from the AI space down to machine learning and deep learning. Basically, we have large data sets that we're working with. I was just wondering if you're getting more in the open architecture, a lot of shared data, so your models are better. So when you're doing training and moving into the inference space, if you've got large data sets that you're working from, or are you just working in a consortium of data that you're getting from, what you're capturing right now?
If I can clarify the question, so what you are asking is that do we make our own data set, or do we just work with the data set that the company provides or the client
open
provides?
data sets.
The open
Yes,
data
open
sets.
data sets.
I try not to work with open data sets, as I talked about the clean data set. The cleaning part is more difficult. So these open data sets are not usually clean. So we try to work with the client's data. That is the most cleanest and the most accurate data. But we do bring in the open data sets to bring in those abnormalities, to train the data that this is something that now has not to be recognized, to bring that testing phase that, oh, is it recognizing this, or to tell it that it has not to. So we do that testing, and during the testing phase, we usually do that. And as for architectures, we have PhD researchers in our team, So we usually build our own architectures as well if something that is not working for us. So that is basically,
Yeah, that's the one thing that we've found is there's a lot of data sets that are out there and then combining the different data sets together, but having your algorithms go in and creating something called deep personalization, where you can go in and optimize the data sets that you have and actually use a deep personalization algorithms to clean the, some of the data that may not be as clean.
Exactly.
And bring it into the environment. So that's kind of what we're doing right now. We're basically taking data that we've captured over, 1 billion plus customers. We have very accurate data sets. We know how the data is being aggregated, but then we still go out and get additional data sets that are out there that may not be as clean, and we create something internally we call deep personalization within our data sets for deep learning and cleaning of different objects that are out there. Yeah, so, but it sounds like currently you're working with a lot of the customers' data, which is going to be the cleanest because they basically went into their data sets and they're only storing X amount of data, so its accuracy is high.
Accuracy is high, but we still try to bring in some of the other abnormalities just to get that data trained more accurately. I think it is important to get some abnormalities in to tell the data that it is not this that is recognizing. We have seen that there is a higher accuracy overall.
And that's really what, I've got really close friends here in the Silicon Valley that work at Tesla. So they've been taking a lot of data that their cars have been discovering over the years and passing that data back into the factory so that, as you said, in India, they initially started with data that came from India and said, hey, let's build on this. Hey, what about snow? Or hey, what about the homeless guy that walks at 1 o'clock in the morning in the middle of the road? How do you prevent your car from hitting that person? All of those data sets need to be added to that algorithm. So a lot of improvements come into scale whenever you start using more of an algorithm approach to doing deep personalization for each of their different areas. So over at Tesla, they're focusing on driving. Over at Meta, we're focusing on something else completely, where we can do more of a assessment of more augmented reality and how we're moving into that next phase. So it's been pretty exciting, leading a lot of areas there. So thanks for the answer.
I can maybe speak a little bit to like a contrasting product. So for us at Haven, we aren't able to collect our customer data because they are using our product to record without necessarily consent of everyone who's on the recording. And so for us, like we do rely pretty heavily on like open source data sets, as well as like some data sets that we have scraped from like various online videos of like real life situations. And then when we're actually like training and testing, we have some reliance on simulating as closely as possible the real life situations that people are in. And this does mean like for us, we have a pretty heavy focus on customer discovery interviews, where we just take time to talk to a lot of the people that we are designing for to understand what those situations are like, so that we can then take that away and have actors go through and simulate situations using like just cheap smartphones and try and simulate as closely as possible. So we kind of have a mix of like open source data that we have to scrape and clean, and then like data sets that we have to try and create to simulate customer data, because there's just some legal issues for us with actually collecting that data.
Just a short answer, Tom, if you're interested in the garbage space. For us, initially we tested out quite a bit of open data sets and things, crowdsourcing. But I think at the end of the day, it matters like where are you getting the best data, what's going to be your moat long term. And I think Meta is very different. We should maybe connect. We actually are working with Meta in certain things. But the key thing for us was, all right, like the long-term vision is definitely getting as many sensors out there the quickest possible and collecting and creating that garbage data set that could be applied in a lot of different aspects. And so that's kind of what we're seeing is everybody is getting in trouble with using other data sets. And so our sort of the pick that we had, because we cannot, like, at least from our perspective, like if we do crowdsourcing, you have to spend so much time in cleaning that data set, and it's just like, hey, send us images of like your trash items and roll it out in schools and high schools and things like that, and that it gets messy very quickly. And you think these are bottles, and now you're spending so much time in cleaning them up. At least for us, it was like we've got to pick one option that we know we're going to be super effective in the start, and then now we're getting to this level where we could actually combine multiple things because we have the core data set. And I think same goes for Facebook, that when Facebook started, like the amount of data that you guys got from all of us is what your initial mode is, and now you can definitely obviously forward to experiment all these other things on top of that because of the base that you guys have. But for a startup perspective, it's like you've got to pick a strategy, and for us, we picked like we've got to build our own data set, to deliver a kick-ass product.
Okay. So just moving on to the next question here. So how is your business or AI within your business generally being used to help people? Just kind of elaborating more on that. So yeah, would anyone like to touch on that?
I can start us off. So yeah, I mean, that's the whole basis for Haven. There's sort of a couple key ways that we are helping people. Through our journaling app, we help sort of identify patterns of abuse, identify red flags. There's a lot of psychology research that shows that when people are going through trauma and abuse, they actually don't remember the situation, or they their brain will make it seem like it wasn't as bad as it was, like after the situation. So this contributes to like people struggling to report or leave situations that they aren't safe in because their brain is rationalizing it. So it's kind of like this whole field of affective computing where we understand emotions, we understand patterns, and we actually help the user sort of like take control of their own data to help them, have the receipts when they are trying to make the best decision for their life, and potentially have some data to support if they need to, make a legal case at some point. On the voice recognition side, we also have the ability for people to flag these like severe incidents and understand like how severe they are, and understand like if things are getting worse, and then we can sort of take some actions for them, such as like reaching out to like a trusted friend or contact when it gets to a point where they need someone to intercede without them signaling in the moment to an abuser that they're doing that. So these are some of the ways that we are working to support people.
I can start us off as well. So basically, we being a service provider and an agri-tech, So we have a couple of companies, so that might take time. But essentially, what we started off was with a social company as well. We started off with a social project called Meaningful Work. So we built a recommendation system for them that matched opportunities and their chats and basically all the things that they put on the platform to what opportunity would best suit them for nonprofit volunteering. So we actually started off with that. We went into agri-tech. So with agri-tech, we actually we have actually an IP where you can use infrared cameras to detect the water content of an apple, to detect the ripeness. So right now, farmers only have the access to see the size or the color of the apple. But if you knew the water content, you can actually grade the apple in much more detail. And that was not possible by any camera anywhere in the world. We were able to do that using deep learning and infrared cameras to tell the water content of the apple and allow the farmers to grade it. So you know that you are eating a apple that's going to be juicy, or you know it's going to be a lean apple or a crispy apple just by a camera, and the farmers can grade it. So and pluck it and recognize the ripeness and everything at the same time. So we have an IP over there. Then we actually started developing for a company. So right now, as you wear, wristwatches on your hands to tell you the heartbeat, your O2 levels, or you have to wear some kind of Fitbit or anything. We actually developed a system, and again, we do not have, we passed on the IP, but we developed using your camera, we can tell exactly what is your O2 level, what is your heartbeat, and all those things just using your phone's camera, and no other specialized equipments, no Fitbit, no nothing. So and Apple has been also developing it, but we were actually quicker to develop it. Then we are actually in a bit of Hassan's field as well, but a bit further down the line where we are sorting trash for companies. So same line, give us garbage. I like to pick up that line, but essentially that's one thing that we are doing as well, that where Hassan collects it, sends it to a processing plant, and then that's where we tell the processing plant, oh, this is what you're getting like 100 bottles of Tide or 20 bottles of what kind of Tide and what color it is and what grade it is. So those kind of things. So those are a couple of projects that we are doing, and essentially building it into a robotics so that you can collect it, get so much insights, get the proper data or a proper clean garbage, that if anyone has, so basically we put everything in the blue bin or the red bin or a green bin. We are doing that to sort that out so that everything goes in the right place. So we share a common vision and understand with the problems, but that's something that we are doing on our end. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Now I will be more careful with what I say. I'm just kidding. It's complementary to what we, so just to kind of add to that, so sorting at the end gets about 5 or 2% recyclables right now. So what we're trying to do is increase the tap so that more can go to the fancy recycling facility. So yeah, in terms of, I think it's quite obvious in some ways, why are we trying to sort waste at the source? Materials only have a value if they are sorted. And so the basic thing is, and fundamental thing here is, the more and the cleaner source segregation you have, the better for the environment, the better for your economy, because you do not have to create that entire material from virgin sources, right? Like that's the whole premise of this, is you're trying to save that energy and not again dig from our planet. So yeah, that impacts directly, like our main mission and purpose is a very emotional one, that we, it's like we see all of that trash illegally being shipped to our countries, and why do we want to stop it? It's a passion and a motivation of ours that we really will not stop until we make a dent in this space, and that there's greater transparency is the first step. in this entire supply chain. So at the end or at the start is where we believe. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, you three. It's so really great to hear like the kind of work that's being done, and you guys are all still like have so much like career time ahead of you, and I'm really excited to see what you three do. So I think we have time for another question here. So me being with the Chang Institute for Entrepreneurship, I do want to hear about how that influences your work. So my question is, how does having an entrepreneurial and innovative mindset influence your work?
I think entrepreneurship is a buzzword. Entrepreneurship, I think, is all about perseverance and being able to, um, uh, see a bigger picture at the end of the day, that you see that this kind of impact, this work made this impact. But at the end, for me, I think it could be different for many people, and it's different. For me, it's all about perseverance. At the end of the day, I am satisfied that I made an impact in terms of I made a new object, made a new advancement, or as simple as that I was perseverant in terms of I completed this project. So secondly, I think entrepreneurship is all about not profits, and it has changed a lot since 1980s. Now it's all about creating an impact, and that's what companies are moving forward to. And yeah, I think impact is the right word for entrepreneurship as well in my dictionary.
I totally agree with that. Yeah, it's become like so important to include like social good in business now, and I think that's a really great change that's come about.
Right. Sorry, Christian, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, from our perspective, like, and from what I've seen with different people starting out in AI, is like there's a big difference between like AI and a product, and it takes a lot to turn something that's cool into something that people want and can be a viable business model. And it's like this whole mindset shift from like, can we do this cool thing that academics get excited about, to should we do this cool thing? And a huge part of this is like understanding your market, because you can't create a product and then find a market for it. That's not going to work. You have to find a market and create a product for it. And I think that's where you sometimes see AI struggle. Like you'll hear about these cool things and you're like, whoa, it's really neat that we have the ability to do this. But then it doesn't necessarily add business value. It doesn't add profit if you're in a FANG corporation. I think we saw with like the Amazon Prime Video, they came out with the X-ray vision feature where you can like pause the show that you're watching and it pops up like who these actors are, etc. And I saw a talk from the like executive member who like led that, and he was like, yeah, it showed no no actual change, like, but it's interesting, it's fun. And I think the entrepreneurial mindset is like, look for the market, like discover, spend time getting to know your market and shape the product around that. And there's some really great tools for this. There's like buyer utility maps where you can go through like who are the people that we're creating for, and like what do they deal with when they acquire it, when they have to get rid of it, when they, and you kind of can fill out a whole table of like where this value to the consumer is going to come from. And I think that mindset is really important when you're turning something that's AI, that's fun, into something that's actually a product and a business model.
Yeah, and to add to Nipun and Christian, I think just the way that just some thoughts on entrepreneurship, at least for the past 5 years that we've been in that space or creating something from scratch. I strongly believe, like, and this probably has been said multiple times and you've heard this, but like, do not write a single line of code before you have like a well tested out business model. And like, people are like, who creates business models, who creates business plans? Like, you can do an entire experiment, just like a thought experiment, and create your entire business, talk to customers, will they pay for such a thing? They don't know, yes, what they want, but you can have 100 people signed up to your product even before you have a product. And like, a lot of people, I think, especially in the engineering space that I come from, are just like, no, I can develop this really cool thing. To Christian's point, like, they just want to develop this robot that does AI, like, because it's a robot, man. It would be super cool. Like, for example, and I can like, our trashiest idea was to build a bin that sorted things out, right? Like, this was our first idea, and like, everybody at this, like, I remember I was talking to Jeffrey Hinton in 2017 or 18, and I was telling him the problem, and then he was immediately like, oh, can't a robot sort that out, like, in a bin? And I was immediately like, we didn't have enough time to get into this whole problem, but immediately your brain thinks a robot can solve it out at the bin, or at like a recycling facility. But then when you start understanding the problem, like, a building or a university has 800 garbage bins, and like, they buy a garbage bin, like, people haven't bought garbage bins since 1990. And so like, what's that sales cycle gonna look like? Right? Like, they, like, that budget does not exist for 30 years sometimes. And so when you go and you pitch, hey, here's a robotic sorting garbage bin, the last time they ever paid for this was like 20 years ago or 30 years ago, and they haven't had the need to replace it. And if they just did replace it with a fancy recycling bin, well, they're not, like, they spend, like, each garbage bin costs about $1,000 or so. And so you have 800 of these are millions of dollars being spent on garbage bins, right? So they've just purchased, and you are going in and saying, hey, replace and throw everything out, because my robotic sorting bin that is going to cost you $10,000 is going to be sorting and giving you better recycling. Nobody's going to buy that. And so it was just this basic common sense that people do entire MBAs on, and realize that, an MBA really just teaches you these principles, that, hey, you just have to do thought experiments, and you have to just, like, build out your model before you even do a single thing, and talk to customers, get them to sign up, do every damn framework before you actually enter or start. Like, this is so basic now, but in the start, like, nobody taught us this. And you, as an engineer, you just dive in, and you're just like, no, I'll build this bin, and I'll build this Iron Man suit, and because it's cool. But that's not the point. It's like, sometimes markets don't even exist, but it's like, does the problem exist? And like, when you actually, like, whose problem are you solving? And if you do solve that problem, will people actually pay you for it? And so yeah, it's been definitely a journey, coming from the robotic mindset, going through Next AI, and like, doing a mini MBA at Rodman, and kind of, that's making some sense into us, and us eventually building a business.
My experience has been different. My biggest successes would now being, having Collab and Kaggle available for free. I think now my mindset, my biggest successes have been that I have built things out of the ordinary, like not the robotics one, not spending that, but other things like the AI ones, like the computer visions and the next BERT models and NLP models and machine learning models. I have done them just out of curiosity. Oh, let's just build it and see what happens. And most of my biggest successes and customers have come through those, being the story that I started off with my Apple project that gained me like $2 million in just the first month alone, was a hobby project that one of my employees started like on the side. He's like, okay, I'll do this. It took me like 3 days, sent it to a client. He was like, oh, bring this out to my farm. Let's test it out. And you can take this $150,000 check right now. And that's how it started out. And I think that has a lot, like my results and my advice is actually to the contrast of my other two peers here, that if you have an idea, just try it out. You have Collab for free, you have data set for free. Try it out. What's the worst gonna happen? You're just spending your time. Maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't. At the end you learn something. So that has worked for me and has been my advice to myself.
I stick to my advice. But Niput, great, all props to you, and you have had amazing luck in picking the right categories. But I would seriously, and I think that huge props to you. But 90% of the startups that when you see an incubator, majority of them failed because of that entire process. Even look at your capstone projects.
Yeah.
Every month or every semester, capstone projects happen. They just try it out, right? Like there's just ideas and technical problems that they're trying to solve because their professors are smarter to suggest ideas, or they are, and maybe one idea eventually works out. Definitely gets you a job. In some ways, and so for that reason, try it out in a safe space. I would definitely vouch that. And maybe that's what you did, is like you had a safe space, university, and you had that cushion. But if you're jumping in a startup and you're not getting paid and you've got financial obligations,
don't start it as a startup. It's just as a hobby project, and maybe that goes somewhere. Have a safe space that you have that cushion to fail and start something else. But don't start it as a startup and invest hundreds of thousands. That's what I said, that Collab gives that cushion that, oh, I'm not spending anything in terms of AI. But have that safe space. Like that, I had that cushion of, having other projects still going on. But I agree. But Hassan's point is correct.
What speaks to me about your point of view, though, is that you mentioned like some of these projects are things like, oh, you could put together in 3 days or quick things. And I think that really speaks to the value of lightweight experimentation. Like you don't need to fully build out an entire business model, spend a year, figuring out how you're going to hire people, code of conduct, like all of this stuff before you get to the phase where you test it. Like,
exactly.
And what I hear from what you say is not that you're just trying things out without thinking. It's like you are building in experimentation into your design process, and you're willing to say, I'll test this out early. If it doesn't work, I'll drop it and move on to something else. And that's hugely valuable. You're not getting like stuck on an idea. And like there's lots of ways to do lightweight experimentation without building the feature. Like you see in advertising all the time, like if you want to change out how your model works, like you don't necessarily have to build the whole feature. You can just like put a fake button on a screen and see if users click on it. That's like, hey, look at this cool new feature. And the feature doesn't have to exist, but you can see how many people are clicking on it. And then decide to go build it. And so that's what I hear from you. I think
I think that is the right understanding that I
think you're really smart at figuring out how to do lightweight experimentation with, will someone buy this very early on? And so that's very good advice.
Yeah, for sure. And I would not say anything to spend a year on anything, even a product. Rapid, experimentation is definitely get the quicker essentially you can get customers to say yes. Like that's what the example that you're saying. Like if you can have one customer say yes, amazing, you've got an amazing proof point. And if you had to build 0 things for it, that's the point. What is it? So a problem, you're gonna experiment the quickest way possible to get the customer buy it. And if you start seeing that pattern, awesome. How do I get investment? to, I don't want to build it. I'm a business founder. Then the point is, okay, let me get 100 LOIs signed or 10 LOIs signed super quickly, put up a fake page or whatever, and really get people to buy into this. Advertise it on a couple things, put bare minimum amount of effort, so that when I do go to an investor or anything, and even chatting with them early on, rather than like, so many founders are just like, I think this is a problem, and they've been working on 6, 7, 8 months on trying different things, and they've never even talked to a customer. And then they're like, yeah, we will raise when we build a product and we have a customer and it's succeeded. And I'm just like,
and they keep building features into it. That's one thing that I did a problem with my own thing. Like, I keep building features into it. Don't just build a bare bone product to show it to customers and investors to really confirm your theory.
It's a prototype.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, completely agree.
Yeah, so just like to summarize that, I guess, focusing on the customer and being able to have that business model ready before you get into the fun engineering side of things. And yeah. Okay. So we're just coming up to the end of the event. So I guess to wrap up the session, I have one more question for you three. What's one key suggestion you have for people who want to learn more about AI?
So I would just suggest that if you are starting an AI-focused startup, what has been successful for us and we've experienced it is definitely, check out Next AI, because Next AI or Y Combinator, like really, I think that's something that even if you've got a business model like in the back of a napkin, and you just understand the basic economics, like I will pay this person $10 and I will get paid, and this is my big ass vision, like this is what I'm trying to create, and a couple customers are interested, or like they could be, I think it's like apply for an amazing incubator, with an amazing, a co-founder that you might have found. Next AI does have an option where you can sort of date a co-founder, but yeah, I would definitely say if it's an AI startup that you're trying to create, it's really worked for us. I can definitely vouch for it. Is definitely get into Next AI. Creative Destruction Lab is something where you've got something going, product going, and you have some traction. That's the stage where you get to CDL, and you can get funded. Like this is like not Shark Tank, I think, is a terrible example, but some of the best VCs from the Valley are like there sitting and giving you so much attention and giving you the worst or the best advice that you could think of, and really tearing your business apart. So and each one of those mentors is bare minimum worth like 60 million or something to be on the table. And so yeah, I like Next AI, and then eventually getting into CDL if you want to do it in Canada, or Y Combinator for sure. It's one of the global ones.
I can go maybe. I think from my side, I think what Hassan said is great. Like Next AI, having people to communicate with and really have that idea, but being on more personal level, if you are a business student like me, I'm from a business background, not from an AI background, really starting off with Coursera's YouTube, and just getting to understand the basics of it first, and then moving forward with the logics and everything, and building that logical skill is the most important one. Testing out different algorithms, understanding what's happening in each algorithm, and understanding the base of them is the best way to start off with deep learning, machine learning, or AI like as a whole. And then there are so many courses presented by Coursera, Nvidia, and other companies. So just really getting into them and really figuring out that okay, this is it. I think that is, on a personal note, I would say, a really great thing. And then rather than thinking of going towards AWS or these fancy cloud computing, just use Collab, Kaggle, or online GPUs, or buying a GPU as well. For a year, I have used online GPUs, like these kind of things, to really build up my business. And I think those are amazing things rather than starting up and investing, because then again, you have a cushion to fail and you have that, oh, I can do this or I can do that. But really learning, even if you're a business or any other student, and having a team as well, both helps at a personal level, I think.
Yeah, I agree with what Hassan and Ethan said. And just thinking back, like the question about, if you're interested in learning more about AI, if we go back full circle to the beginning of this panel, we talked about what were the biggest challenges when you got into it. And lots of people mentioned sort of this overwhelming, fast-paced nature of the industry. There's always new things coming out, new research. And one of the things that I found really helpful was just joining a reading group. There's a really good reading group in Vancouver that goes through different data science papers every week. It's been a little on and off during COVID, but that has just been a really nice community to have people to talk to and suggest different papers you might not have run into otherwise from a variety of industries. You can figure out maybe something that was used in one place and you find a new application for it. I think it's just a really great way to keep your learning fresh, especially if you're not in a huge company. Now that I'm in a big tech company, we have lots of internal initiatives for staying up to date. You get budgets for taking courses and stuff, but that was a really nice free way for me to have a community to hold each other accountable to staying up to date on trends in AI and data science. So I would highly recommend finding that community, especially if you're a founder of a startup or whatever, where your company has 1 or 2 people in it. You need to have that community where you can learn from each other.
I think that's some great advice. Thank you so much, you three. Okay, so I think that will wrap up this event for this evening. Thank you everyone for joining us and sticking with us till the end. And a huge thank you to our amazing 3 panelists. You guys led some amazing discussion, and really, I think everyone took away something from that. So we all really appreciate your time. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.